if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased.
That's right. We gotta slowly murder them. We had to slowly move them on out, okay? Ethnic cleansing, it's a lot of effort. It takes a while. Get this shit done. So says Harry Truman.
We had all sorts of objections to everything that was done.
You don't say, Harry S. Truman, that there would be objections to being thrown off violently from your own land. You fucking Nazi. Didn't the Jews just go through this? Didn't you just oversee the last greatest conflict in history where this thing was happening?
Something had to be done. We went ahead and done it and had it done.
We went ahead and done it. We had to do it. We went ahead and had it done.
And now it's working out. Eventually, I think we'll have them all satisfied.
Yeah, have them all satisfied.
To talk about the situation in the Middle East. The future of the United Nations and peace in the Middle East may be at stake. In the 4 months since I talked to you about the crisis in that area, the United Nations has had considerable progress in resolving some of the difficult problems. We are now, however, faced with a fateful moment as a result of the failure of Israel to withdraw its forces behind the armistice lines.
I wanted to hear the rest of that. Unfortunately, it clipped. But Eisenhower famously was one of the presidents that was able to, in 1956, or maybe it was actually in 1957, because of an illegal raid into Gaza conducted by Israel in 1956, I think October of 1956, if memory serves, which was, by the way, the first time that Israel occupied the Gaza Strip and the Sinai in that respect, which has been a continuing tradition, obviously, as we've known. But it first started, or took its first form, in 1956. Dwight D. Eisenhower famously got the Israeli government to withdraw from the Gaza Strip by, forcing sanctions, or threatening sanctions. And I use this as an example, and so does Norman Finkelstein use it as an example, and that's where I'm getting this from, as an example of the United States having actual material power over Israel and not the other way around. As you can see, the Prime Minister of Israel has to travel to the United States at his weakest political moment and drum up support, right? Shore up his American constituents by making this grand political theater, because he knows, as he said in his speech to Congress, there's a simple thing that happens when the United States and Israel are friends. We win. And he knows what he's trying to say is, keep sending money, please. Keep sending aid. Let's keep going with this. My political career is at stake. But yeah, Dwight D. Eisenhower was one of the presidents to show that.
Nations caught in regional conflict, in racial issues, or in the death throes of old colonialism.
Can you believe that President JFK actually said the word colonialism?
Chronic dispute which divert precious resources from the needs of the people, or drain the
paying lip service to anti-imperialism, are we, JFK?
energies of both sides serve the interests of no one. And the badge of responsibility in the modern world is a willingness to seek peaceful solutions. It is never too early to try, and it's never too late to talk.
So it's like, JFK was of U.S. presidents, you could say. I wouldn't pat him on the back or give him an award or anything, but he was, among U.S. presidents, among his peers, much more sympathetic to the third world.
We now come, of course, to the critical time in terms of the future of the Mideast. And here, the outlook is far more hopeful than what we have been through this past week.
I think this is in response to the 1973 war between Egypt and Israel.
The critical time in terms of the future of the Mideast. And here, the outlook is far more hopeful than what we have been through this past week. I think I could safely say that the chances for not just a ceasefire, which we presently have, and which of course we have had in the Mideast for some time, but the outlook for a permanent peace is the best that it has been in 20 years.
Importance, that continued movement toward peace on a justifiable basis in the Middle East, it's vital to that area of the world and probably to the world as a whole.
And this would involve substantial withdrawal of Israel's present control over territories. Now, where that withdrawal might end, I don't know. I would guess it would be some minor adjustments in the 1967 borders, but that still remains to be negotiated.
Millions of us have seen pictures of the Palestinian victims of this tragedy. There's little that words can add.
Here's Satan.
But there are actions we can and must take to bring that nightmare to an end.
Puts Kamala's statements in perspective, doesn't it? You think she's actually paying lip service to the Palestinian plight. Well, so did f***ing Reagan, all right? Big f***ing deal. They've been saying this shit for decades and decades, is my point. Just because the rhetoric is nicer doesn't mean shit's gonna change.
For our friends in Lebanon and Israel, for our friends in Europe and elsewhere in the Middle East, and for us as Americans, this tragedy,
Surprised he said friends in Lebanon.
horrible as it is, reminds us of the absolute imperative.
But this is Reagan responding to the 1982 Israel-Lebanon war. And one of the few things I know about this war, aside from the overall power differential and it being another iteration of Israel's deterrence policy, which is to wreak disproportionate, savage violence against the civilian population in order to break their spirit, humiliate, terrorize, and punish them. It was also a humiliation for Israel, and it began with Israel bombing a Palestinian children's hospital. Why would a Palestinian children's hospital be located in Lebanon? Well, that's because of Israel, because Israel has dispossessed Palestine, that Palestinians have to seek infrastructure elsewhere. They have to flee. They have to, what's the word, be expatriated, or be in exile, I guess that's the right word, is they're thrown in exile. And so just think about that, okay? Israel began this war by bombing a Palestinian children's hospital. Israel began this war by bombing a hospital. In 1982, what were we arguing about in 2023? Whether or not Israel bombed Al-Shifa Hospital, or was it a rogue Palestinian rocket that misfired? It's like, methinks you lost the plot much. Israel has been bombing hospitals on record since before you were born, well before you were born. And oh, by the way, that actually goes back to the 40s. They've been bombing hospitals since the 40s. They've been bombing mosques since the 40s. They have been doing the same thing. It's just that we have iPhones now. We have the internet, So it's all visible. It's all way more visible than it's ever been. It's never gone away. It's only gotten more amplified and worse. And now we have the technology to share about it across the world.
The United States is committed to a comprehensive peace achieved through direct negotiations based on UN Security Council resolutions 242 and 338.
So we all know 242, right? 1967. What's UN 338? I know that there's like a whole plethora of them that I don't actually know about, that like kind of I gloss over. This resolution calls for all parties to cease all firing and terminate all military activities immediately. The parties should implement Security Council resolution. So it goes back to, it's an extension of 242 in all of its parts, and immediately and concurrently with the ceasefire, start negotiations with an aim to establish a just and durable peace in the Middle East. And here's the full PDF we could open up. Amazing. But Yisrael Chai boys will never do this. They will never do this. So Resolution 338 was from 1973. Calls upon all parties to the present fighting to cease all firing and terminate all military activity no later than 12 hours after the moment of the adoption of this decision in the positions they now occupy. Calls upon the parties concerned to start immediately after the ceasefire to implement 242. So like I said, an extension of 242 in all of its parts. 3. Decides that immediately and concurrently with the ceasefire, negotiations shall start between the parties concerned under appropriate auspices aimed at establishing peace in the Middle East. So that's just, I guess that's why UNSC 338 is like not as quoted in the historical record as 242, obviously.
This remains the building block for a viable negotiation for a durable settlement. This is our goal.
What do I think of Syria? I think the U.S. military should leave Syria and let the people self-determine on their own. We understand that the United States military literally owns half the territory. Half of the Syrian territory is owned literally by the United States. Glizzy is a marijuana joint? Oh my God, we got a Fed in the chat? Jesus Christ. James, get the out of here. Hey guys, let's go smoke some glizzies, am I right? No, James. You're actually quite wrong. Bill Clinton, obviously, the Oslo Accords. There's Netanyahu right there.
Offered the chance for the parties to break the logjam and finally take the next essential steps for peace in the Middle East.
There's Yasser Arafat. That is Netanyahu.
Remember, as we come together again, that in the end, peace is more than a process.
Peace is more than a process. It is a process, but it's more than a process. It's actually way more than a process. What is it, Bill Clinton? What is it?
It is, in the end, a destination.
That's right, a destination. And what are destinations if not in the future? Remember that when the United States wants peace, and when Israel wants peace, remember those things happen immediately. When the United States and Israel do not want peace, it's a destination. It's to be had in the future. Some unforeseeable time in the future, there will be peace and we will get there, but it's going to take hard work because there's a lot of history and it's complex. We must have a path. There shall be a path to peace. Now, famously, a part of the Oslo Accords, which was a farce, which was a scam, which did not, in fact, recognize the Palestinians' right to self-determine, okay? Did not actually give the Palestinians agency over their land, resources, and labor, did not recognize their national territory and their national identity as a people. I know it's the Oslo Accords, but like, apart from that, well, Israeli officials themselves are on record as of saying, if I were Palestinian, I would not have accepted the Oslo Accords. The point was the interim period, because remember we're talking about destinations. It's like pathway to peace. You know, it's always in the future. Well, the Oslo Accords famously had baked into it the agreement that there would be a 5-year grace period. There would be a 5-year, what did they call it? Confidence building. That's what it was. A 5-year confidence building period. So Norman Finkelstein, I think, brings this up pretty astutely of Norman to bring this up. But, you know, going back to Egypt and Israel in 1973, or maybe it was in the later 70s. I know there was something in 1979 as well between Egypt and Israel, another conflict. And when Carter, got involved, like the peace deal was reached immediately. Egypt got its peace immediately. Israel got its peace immediately. But for some reason, as I said before, the Palestinians, they need confidence building periods baked into their peaceful ceasefire resolutions, ceasefire agreements. Why is there a 5-year interim period for the Palestinians? Why is there this so-called confidence building period? Well, it's because Israel can use that time to implement their subcontractors and make sure that they are doing the bidding of the Israeli state. And also another point about the Oslo Accords is that there were, and I forget the numbers, I forget the math, but there was, if there was, there might have been 30 or 40 pages devoted to the rights of VIPs in Palestine, and there was maybe a page on the call for Palestinian detainees in Israel to be returned, or the rights of these prisoners. It was more so about, in other words, it's about, the Oslo Accords had in it more language devoted to the rights of Palestinian VIPs than it did for Palestinian detainees, Palestinian prisoners being unlawfully detained by Israel. And that's very revealing, because what it tells you is that the Oslo Accords were it was corrupt. It gave special precedence to another little privileged class of Palestinians in that society. They had an upper crust there that were given special rights. But why were they given these special rights? That was because they were doing the work of Israel. All right, moving on.
This means that the Israeli occupation that began in 1967 will be ended through a settlement negotiated between the parties based on UN resolutions 242 and
It's literally the same language, right? The same language we heard. Daddy Bush spoke the same exact words 2 decades previous, or maybe it was a decade previous.
338, with Israeli withdrawal to secure and recognize borders.
1 year ago, I stood at this podium and I called for an independent Palestine. I believed then, and I believe now, that the Palestinian people deserve a state of their own.
Yeah, it was Bush. He copied Daddy's homework. You noticed that, huh? Do we have to continue on with this shit show? Let's see what Donald Trump had to say.
I want this deal to be a great deal for the Palestinians.
He loves deals. Remember, Donald Trump made the book. He wrote the book on deals. Donald Trump wrote the book on deals. Donald Trump wrote you The Art of the Deal. Thank you. Donald Trump is a fucking artist. He's an artist of the deal. He's a dealist. And because of that, that's why his deal for the Middle East, the peace deal, was the best. It was the most immaculate, most perfect deal that you could ever think of in the history of humans. And you know what? Even he couldn't get the deal done. Even Donald Trump couldn't get the deal done. So that tells you just how complex peace in the Middle East just has to be.
It has to be.
It has to be.
Today's agreement is a historic opportunity for the Palestinians to find...
We're giving them a really nice deal. You know what? If they just accepted the UN partition plan in 1947, then none of this would have happened. That was a good deal. They should have thought about that. They should have thought about violently resisting being thrown off their land before they decided to violently resist. Because that was a bad move. Remember the Nazis coming in and deporting the Jews? If only the Jews would have acted right. If only the Jews had, I don't know, just accepted the policies of subjugation by the Nazis. Maybe they would have been nicer. Maybe if they gave up their property willfully and didn't go all kicking and screaming, maybe the Nazis wouldn't have deported the Jews, and maybe they would have saved them. Maybe the Nazis would have saved them from their own extermination. But no, you know what? We have the Jews to thank. Thank you, Jews, for the Holocaust. Really, well done.
After 70 years of little progress, this could be the last opportunity they will ever have.
This has been one of the hardest, most complicated...
That's right. It would be the last opportunity. Look, Donald Trump's here. He is your savior. If you don't act now, this might be your last opportunity you'll ever have, Palestinians. Sayonara. Joke's on you, folks.
Problems in the world. There's nothing easy about this. Nothing easy about it.
Also very difficult. This ain't like going into the ice cream parlor and getting your favorite ice cream, okay? This is a tough deal.
Through it all, though, the United States has worked relentlessly to support Israeli security, get humanitarian supplies into Gaza, to get a ceasefire and a hostage deal to bring this war to an end. Yesterday...
I have dementia. My name is Joe Biden. Joe Biden said he's Joe Biden.
With this new initiative, we've taken an important step in that direction.
Okay, well, thank you to Eric Nielsen for putting together that supercut. Shout out to Eric. He's in the chat with us right now. This is his handiwork. Subscribe. How do we share about it? Let's leave a comment. Yesterday, I think I said something to the effect of somebody should make a supercut of all the times that U.S. presidents have said path to peace.
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Clinton sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. Obama gave the orders to do drone strikes.